right, so let's get started. I have a feeling other people will be trickling in this midterm week. So good afternoon, everybody. This is very excited about today's lunchtime faculty talk. So I'm going to introduce, say a few words about Erin. She is a designer, an activist, educator, and thought leader who's based right here in Los Angeles. She recently founded Gensler Clip, an architecture, research, and design practice, and previously held design positions at a diverse array of firms, and I'll mention that in a second here. In her past lives, she exhibited as an artist, dabbled in the construction industry, and co-founded a theater company. She holds a Master of Architecture from Cornell University and a Bachelor of Arts from Woodbury College. So that's the formal bio. And let me unpack a little bit about Erin, because I think she has a really remarkable story. She's one of four sisters, which I love. She studied scenic and theater design as an undergraduate at Woodbury College. She started by designing unreal environments. But she also worked as a project engineer at a construction company while applying for grad school. While at Cornell, she interned at Diller, Scofidio, and Renfro and did work in Rwanda. Is that correct? And I say this to the students as a way of thinking about all the different experiences she had before she became an architect. And I think that that's something that when you're working as a student, you have a little bit more freedom to experiment, and I really encourage all of you to do exactly that. She worked at Gensler for 4 years, which she describes as a university, partly because of the educational experience, but also because of its size, which I thought was an interesting way of talking about that firm. So it can't have been easy to, given her name, to live up to the legacy and to prove herself, and for that I salute her. Born into the legacy of one of the biggest architecture firms, if not the biggest architecture firm in the world, Erin learned about architecture both organically from her architect family members as well as while working as an intern in the firm that her grandparents had founded, which actually started as an interior design firm. She and her partner, Stephen Clip, established the firm Gensler Clip a few years ago, and the firm operates at the intersection of emergent technological, artistic, and social forces within the landscape of design. So the firm basically pulls together all of these strands of her background. And I look forward to hearing some of the work that you've been doing. They manifest beautiful, innovative, and culturally significant works of architecture, art, and research in pursuit of enhancing and broadening the human experience through design. And for that, I would say that that's very much in keeping with the original legacy of your grandfather's firm in a way, but then also your story, your personal story. Your partner, Stephen, calls Erin a Los Angeles evangelist, excited about the possibilities. I'm going to steal that, by the way. Excited about the possibilities of the limitless project that we call Los Angeles. And at one point, you even worked on a historical renovation of a Julia Morgan project. So I'm going to end with a quote from Erin at this amazing piece. If you haven't seen it, it's by Madam Architect, who interviewed Erin a few years ago. And this is Erin, quote, "There's comfort in knowing that I'm not going to be at my best until I'm older." Maybe because I just had a birthday yesterday, that struck me today. "That I've not peaked and that I'm continually learning and evolving. And so is the work that I'm doing. Each project helps the next. I truly think architecture can inspire social change and that design affects the world." So I can confirm that that's exactly who you are, a thoughtful, rigorous, and respected instructor, always open to learning and evolving as a teacher. I can personally say that you're a welcome, gracious, and professional presence in our faculty, and we're lucky to have you here. So join me in welcoming Erin to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for the invitation to present today. And thank you all for coming. My name is Erin Gensler, and I'm actually a registered architect. When that was written, I wasn't, in the state of California. I teach studio here and have a budding architecture practice with my partner, Stephen Clip, under the very creative name of Gensler Clip. In my past lives before architecture, I was a project engineer in a construction firm. And before that, by day, I worked in a nonprofit. And by night, I was an artist and directed and designed shows in New York City. It was there where I founded a theater company that produced off-Broadway work and at the New York Fringe Festival. The reason I'm sharing this, besides providing context on who I am, is that these experiences have provided the catalyst for augmenting my architectural background with a more distinctly performative approach to conceiving and interpreting spaces. The world we as architects carry from hypothetical conception to physical reality. Theater is simply a more explicit manifestation of the architectural crucible that gives birth to our material worlds, the stage set of human life. Every stage is a blank canvas, every audience a willing participant, one hopes, in the perpetuation of an imagined reality. The spaces we create as architects are only incidentally different from the stage. Every space we create is an orchestration of narrative, overt and passively informed. The professional marriage of theater and construction grafted onto an otherwise conventional architectural background has provided me both the opportunity to explore new narratives that challenge both the formal and performative conventions of the architectural practice. At age 18, I ran towards anything that wasn't architecture, at least in part to escape a more personal convention. My father, his father, and a huge portion of my extended family have participated in the architectural profession for generations. And basically, I turned to theater in order to escape the family business. But I didn't feel fulfilled. Theater can be incredibly powerful, but also at times somewhat trivial. My work in the theater only confirmed that I was spending what talents I had on informing a facsimile of reality to the amusement of a small, affluent audience, while stubbornly rejecting an opportunity to inform reality itself. I began to challenge what I was doing and question why I was concocting fake worlds when I could be reprogramming the world around us. Reprogramming the world, a totally reasonable expectation to start with when I entered the architectural profession. To prep for today, I looked at my body of work thus far and attempted to zero in on those projects that tapped into the overarching through line, not just of the semester provoked by the Woodbury School of Architecture regarding housing, but more broadly, those professional explorations that have begun to form a narrative pattern at the practice of Gensler clip. I have worked on over 800,000 square feet of built residential structures in my career, and currently have 3 ADUs, a ground up, 2 renovations under the mantle of our newly christened office. In short, I've participated in a lot of housing. Logic and practicality might suggest the wisdom of focusing on these projects, but like most architects, I've been saddled with a contrarian desire to subvert practical wisdom and, on occasion, misbehave. As such, I will instead address the 3 projects that are the antithesis of housing. They are categorically not domestic. However, I believe these anti-domestic projects have within them a thesis regarding the domesticity each rejects. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 projects. 1, the manifestation of a school for homeless, foster, and recently incarcerated youth. 2, the study of a city without houses. And 3, a proposal for a public toilet that literally recontextualizes the world around it. Act 1, Project XQ, Rise High. A bit more backstory. I have a background in public interest design. I worked with the firm ASA and their partnership with UNICEF on early child development centers in rural Rwanda. And while I was at Cornell, I helped found the Engaged Learning and Research Program and participated in conferences surrounding the issue. After graduating, I worked at a corporate architecture firm. You probably know what one that is. And it took me a while to find a place where I could feel good about what I was working on. I was lucky enough to work on a diverse set of projects, from a renovation of one of my heroes, Julia Morgan, California's first female architect, to repositioning the tallest skyscraper in the city, as well as several residential towers. But ultimately, in a large office, I found a home in the education studio. Besides loving the people I worked with, I believe that if I could make a space for learning that affected the students served by it, I could indirectly contribute to these scholars' larger impact on the world. This is also one of the reasons I love teaching. While working at this massive firm, I was asked to give a tour to some high school students and their teachers. It wasn't uncommon for me to do this. We work with schools and wanted to inspire students to see themselves in the design world. What was out of the ordinary was the phone call I got a few weeks later. Carrie Croft, the teacher I'd given the tour to, asked on a phone call, "Do you want to design a high school?" After choking on my coffee and discussing it further, I said yes. The challenge, besides having absolutely no budget and not much time, the high school in question didn't exist. This high school was really nothing more than an idea with a few test students. They were applying with over 700 schools to a competition called Project XQ. Our team would eventually be one of the winning proposals selected from those 737 applicants. Project XQ has been described, perhaps unhelpfully, as where IQ meets EQ, and was looking for ways to prepare the next generation to deal with issues that we might not even realize exist because the world is changing so exponentially fast. Funded by Laurene Powell Jobs, 10 schools that rethink the high school of the future would be awarded $10 million to make them a reality. So I gathered a like-minded group of young designers and architects who were hungry for a design challenge and beer and chips provided by the large corporate firm we worked for. And we joined a team of students who had been in the system, students who were part of the test program, caseworkers, advocates, service providers, and educators to think of a better way to serve homeless and foster youth. This is the video after they found out the team was awarded.
It's crazy to think about the huge numbers, nearly 4,000 homeless people on the streets of LA right now.
One sleep here, one sleeps here, one sleeps here, and I came straight from placement. I've been in like 10 different group homes, probation and stuff, and that made it hard, focusing in school when I had problems going on at home.
The system doesn't always work for them. The system is not always there to support them, or they've internalized ideas that, this is where they're at, and this is where they'll always be. School can be a force that counteracts that.
RISE is focused on particularly educating kids who are homeless, who are foster care children.
To know that XQ supports us is the most incredible feeling, and to know that this is a commitment that we're going to have the privilege of making is like nothing else I've ever felt in the entire world.
So our model, one, will be co-located with service providers who have been, working alongside homeless and foster youth for much longer than I have.
The Mobile Learning Center is a really exciting idea. It just came from conversations with students. What does it take to access you when you're not stable, when you're transient? Creating a space with hygiene products, with Chromebooks, with cell phone chargers, with tutors, with therapists, whatever kind of supports that they need. All right, guys, well, congratulations on finishing your first year.
We opened up because, before we didn't like school, we didn't like none of that. Now look at us. In our community, it's a lot of people out there in the world who are going through struggles, who might not want to say anything, but this school can really change people.
The design challenge we had was threefold. One, to investigate the pupils and their unique needs. Two, design a mobile unit that could be moved to wherever it was needed and that could be easily emulated as the school grew. And we were co-locating with service providers, and we didn't know what state those would be given to us or where they would be. So for the competition, we designed a toolkit, almost as if it was a retail rollout of materials, furnitures, graphics, that can be implemented so that no matter where you were, you felt part of something bigger, a space that could provide the consistency in life and education that might not be available to these users previously. The majority of the funds were allocated towards starting a school, so we had to figure out how best to create a mobile facility on a very tight budget that could also be a sustainable solution as the school grew. At the same time, the office was working with a partner high school who had asked for professional advisors to create a tiny house for a 12th grade project. Players from all parties and additional designers and engineers donated their time. We came together to create a buildable design of a mobile learning center. Then a group of 12th graders at Da Vinci High School built it, and now it is used by Rise High. a school that didn't exist 5 years ago and now serves over 160 students. We weren't designing structures exclusively, but we were using our ability and training as problem solvers paired with other experts to orchestrate and design a new version of a school that adjusts the education pipeline in order to provide a specialized educational opportunity that didn't previously exist for new generations of students that no longer need to acquiesce to the notion that school isn't for me. Act 2, California City. A year ago, Gensler Clip received a travel grant to study the high desert. Over the course of the following months, we devoted the lion's share of our free time to navigating and investigating that great ocean of sand and stone in an attempt to understand the structure and narratives that exist in the absence of a constructed context of civilization. We wrote a book about some of our findings and the simultaneously ephemeral and ageless architectural spaces in the high desert. Amongst the places we documented was California City. This is a passage from the volume, written from the perspective of the city itself, personified. And I think like a few little notes, I was a theater major, but I never was on stage. I was always behind the set. And also this voice is supposed to be kind of like a carnival huckster, which is not something my voice does. So just imagine it as something more deep. Once I was an idea, just a thought, whispered in smoke-filled boardrooms and nurtured within hearts of those whose ambition precedes practicality. Foolish, perhaps, but what great city didn't have a conception in the mind of a fool? This is America, friend. How could such a place as I, built through audacity and will, not embrace the new, the open, the call to all with ambition and tenacity? I am a city, named for the great state into which I was made manifest. My creators have carved me from virgin soil, and into that soil they poured their hopes, their dreams, their labor, and their capital. Come see the jewel of America rise. Come see my beautiful, purposeful constellation of parks and promenades. Come see my waterfalls, my golf courses, the bounty which I freely bestow upon those with gumption to join me in this noble enterprise. Come see what our future holds. I will never abandon my mission, but I grow lonely. The years have taken their toll on the expense of luster. Please come, please. I cannot do this alone. Is anyone here familiar with California City? Hand in the back. It's only an hour and a half of drive from here, but it seems like it lives in an alternate universe. When you're there, there's something intensely optimistic underneath the dust, rust, and cracked concrete. Nat Mendelsohn had a dream, a city that was created to rival Los Angeles in 124 square miles in the Mojave Desert, centered around a beautiful, though not native to the desert and artificially watered, of course, park, complete with 1,000 square foot of artificial lake. Seen on a map, it might seem perhaps Mendelsohn's dream has come true. Hundreds of miles of streets cut through the desert area known as California City, ending in cul-de-sac and looking much like a suburban community has been built. By this metric, California City can lay claim to being the third largest city in California. It's huge, and the 34th largest in the nation. However, on closer inspection, one quickly noticed something is missing: houses. There's absolutely nothing lining these streets, no houses, no electrical grid, nothing. The roads form an empty ghost grid, a mirage of suburbia waiting to be filled. Seen from above, it looks almost like the remnants of some ancient culture, ritualistic lines cut in the desert. In short, California City is a facsimile of a bucolic civilization, devoid of any actual civilization. 1960s domesticity devoid of any domiciles. In its current form, the city serves as a monument both to the hubris of its creator and the irreplaceability of the human in human society. There is nothing in the town or the town plan or execution that belies either its location or prospective inhabitants, and the inability to specialize spaces for the sake of specific residents damned Mendelsohn's experiment to the role of a cautionary tale. That's my partner Stephen, and that's what was on the back of the LA Times a long time ago. You can design a world for the masses, but you cannot compel the masses to live inside of your vision. All architectural spaces must, at some level, marry the desires of many to the vision of we select few who have the audacity to create. As of 2008, 50 years after Mendelssohn, California City had a total population of 14,556, huddling together on the southwest corner of the vast, empty suburban grid. Those few who live here do so primarily to facilitate the equally massive California Correctional Center, with a 2,305-bed prison Mendelssohn never planned for. It is only an hour-and-a-half drive from here, and if you are all interested in weird things, it's worth the trek. Few places in California feel more like some glitch in the Matrix. Act 3. The bathroom, water closet, loo, restroom, the John. A long list of euphemisms semantically sanitize the dirty truth of a forgotten room. The toilet. Neglected and ignored by society, this unsung space houses an integral part of the quotidian performance. When a public space is used for a private act, one marred by social stigmas and the politics of politeness, how do we negotiate the boundaries of the public and private? How can we reposition an inherently gendered, by design, and yet universal performance that defines a public facility in order to revise current paradigms of public containment of private behaviors? Also, if I'm being totally honest, I really couldn't resist an academic study with the promise of both scat and sexual politics. I tend to fall in love with places as if they were buildings. Places and buildings as if they were alive. I doubt that is unique in a room full of architects and architectural enthusiasts. While I was visiting my sister who lives in London, I ran across this derelict building in Smithfield. It was beautiful, decrepit, boarded up, and piqued my curiosity about what was inside. After a bit of digging, I discovered it was an old public toilet. At the time, they were called public waiting rooms. But what's so interesting about this particular building and toilet was that it was adjacent to a site that had a 700-year-old carnival that hosts freaks and oddities of all kinds. The lore was that this curiosity housed, and I quote, urinals for giants, midgets, and supposedly even urinals for Siamese twins. The body of the user transformed the space and the apparatus of our private and intimate acts, inspiring new ways of looking at the possibilities of these spaces, instead of the factorization of feces. It's pretty insane to think the toilet design itself has barely changed since its inception in 1851. If you stare at a toilet long enough, it's clear that it is an architectural object. Just leave a moment for you to stare at it. Le Corbusier considered it one of the most beautiful objects industry has produced. So why is it so forgotten in our design? When I was studying at Cornell, I found a lesser-known architectural legacy of bathroom research. Alexander Kira, noted professor, designer of space toilets, and I mean like outer space toilets, he designed the toilets in spaceships, a cult figure in Japan and author of the bathroom book. Written in the late 1960s, he conducted studies of the intimate act and how it could best design for our bodily function. These studies, which would have never been allowed today, were done by underdressed undergraduates, measuring everything from body forms, shapes, behaviors, performance, and of course, splatter patterns. The depth of research encouraged a total redesign of the whole bathroom as we knew it. I asked friends to simulate the Verboten Act with clothes on, obviously, unlike Kira, to observe and quantify otherwise private behaviors. I confirmed with my friend Rachel here, who's pictured here, that I may use this image today. She said I can only do so if I let you know that she's a licensed architect in the state of New York. So, for the record, Rachel's professional background includes capacities beyond that of a defecation model. I tracked movements of different users via diagramming articulation of cones of vision, establishing sightlines, and observing prevailing privacy requirements in the pursuit of a greater specificity in performance and consistency where movement overlaps. Further studies address proven solutions from all over the world. I dove into historic records to understand what was used prior to toilets as we know them, or when societies lacked these amenities. If you have some questions about these, happy to talk for hours about them later. I wondered what people used to clean themselves. I became obsessed with underground infrastructures that discreetly disposed of our waste to far-off places. The body of this research led me to design a theoretical public toilet. In utilizing these investigations, the form of the interior was designed to illuminate and imitate the performance within them, creating an anthology of diverse interior surface conditions. The exterior was delaminated to create a camera obscura that projected stolen moments from the outside world. Each exterior was carefully calibrated to target scenes from the world around us. The projection, in turn, is distorted by the space that is carved out for an explicit bodily function and a distinct act. The project found a home in Times Square, home of peep shows, or at least home of peep shows in the 1970s before Giuliani justified everyone's favorite moral sewer. Yet, the voyeur is inverted. The private act observes a perverted projection of our public world. Times Square, in its current incarnation, is a decidedly civil space that divests tribute to the government and instead unabashedly celebrates and enshrines our common appetites for media and commerce. It is, and has long been, the public eye of the consumer, carrying echoes of rich, diverse, and unapologetically hedonistic history. Could you think of anywhere more public? Yet it is so void of public spaces for relief. It is estimated that 1.6 million people pass through Times Square on a daily basis. And yet tragically, but predictably, not one of those 1.6 million have the opportunity to take a private dump. If you have ever tried to find a place for relief in the lines for the restrooms at the nearby McDonald's, Starbucks, or any of the other chain stores around it, it gives credence to this fundamental failure of practicality. The task was not just to fulfill a scatological need, but to provide a moment that allows us a new understanding for not only the activities enclosed, but also the performance of the public urban world, the performance of the public urban world has affected how we behave in private. By making the private acts specific to public environs, we capture an opportunity to reorient one's experience of the world. Grappling with these ideas theoretically allowed the freedom to reinterpret what we take for granted while we are confronted with massive ideas, including politics, fears, technology, privacy, and our own animal bodies. Today, nearly 40% of the world does not have access to sanitation or toilets. This is approximately the same number of people who currently live in the United States, India, and Africa combined. One child dies every 17 seconds due to the lack of sanitation, unclean water, poor hygiene. And in the 10 years since I started working on this, there has been perhaps an unparalleled effort to address these issues. However, one can easily argue that the current interest in these spaces is still but a pale shadow of the albatross that is the role of our most impolite act in public society. It can be further argued that there is not a space that is more universal, functionally integral, and absurdly bereft of critical analysis, the most emblematic victim of our decidedly civilized professional discourse. There is a bevy of new building and manufacturing technologies, and with these advancements comes new ways of producing less standardized projects. As practitioners who work in the built form, I believe it is our duty to give a shit, pun intended, and rethink the normative constraints that we have built around ourselves and pursue new solutions to ancient problems. Working professionally, bathrooms were often an afterthought, assigned to the junior member on a team or someone in project purgatory, merely fulfilling plumbing codes and maybe getting to choose some fun tiles to put on the bathroom floor. Once I was told while working on a restroom that I looked like I enjoyed it too much. In this reality, toilets are mostly designed by base codes to keep costs low and check off some required boxes. But what does this mean? It means it's political and not personal. It's bureaucratic. Purely as a single example, if plumbing code stipulates a urinal, whose performative act is nothing more than expedient, it is equal to a toilet. That suggests that in gendered bathrooms, women will have to wait longer to pee in line relative to their male counterparts. So, I ask you this: should code be designed for equality or equity? In theater, we were taught to look at the characters of the script before we design the set. In our real world, it becomes equally important to anticipate the performance of the human lives, which will play out in our designs. I could wax on about bathrooms, cities, and educational facilities, and the politics that surround them. But if you leave this lecture with anything besides taking 10 minutes to stare at a toilet, I hope that through the application of a more intimate investigation of the specific performance of human life, our diligence may serve as a vehicle not just for the elevation of those underappreciated spaces we design, but for the elevation of those underserved humans who will live and die within the worlds we make manifest. Thank you.